Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I'm your host, Richard Kaufman, also known as the Comeback Coach. Guys, this is going to be a great episode with my friend Dr. Robb. We're going to be talking about some amazing things, recovery, addiction. We're going to be talking about how to live your life the best way possible today. And if you listen till the end, I'm going to give you a tip that you will never have to worry about getting drunk or getting dope sick ever again by just using this one hack. So just stay till the end. You'll find out what that is. Dr. Robb, my brother, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Doing great, Richard. Thanks. It's a long time coming, this show, but, sit down, guys, and enjoy. I know we're live. So what he said is what he said, but doing good, Rich. Let's do it.
I love it. So Dr. Robb, and I want to hit on so many things. I want to hit on some NLP later. I want to hit on addiction and recovery. But first question is, what is your definition of resiliency?
Resilience for me is just keep going. It's, through the storms, through the sunny side, through the good times, through the bad times. I found out through life it's not about me. It's about other people. So being resilient day in, day out is the key for me. Showing up every single day.
I love it. So give us a little bit of background. Where'd you come from? Obviously, you're not from New Jersey. So tell us a little bit about where you come from, where'd you grow up, and how did you get into this crazy world of recovery and addiction recovery?
So Dr. Robb Kelly, addiction doctor. I grew up in Manchester, the United Kingdom. There's two famous football teams over there. We grew up on the council estates over there, which is basically the projects over here. We come from a very loving family, although there wasn't a lot of money around. I went to normal school, started playing the guitar at the age of 4 or 5, I can't remember. On stage, getting paid with my auntie and uncle at 9 or 10. I was born an alcoholic. So we'll get into this later, and don't freak out with this, guys. But you got to remember, I've been studying neuroplasticity and neuroscience for a long time. Been in the industry for 30 years, over 8,000 patients. Alcoholics are born, drug addicts are made. So there is a slight difference, though we both show up the same, obviously. So I went through the normal trials and tribulations as I grew up, and went to college by freak accident. It was nothing that I did. And the disease got worse and worse and worse until I broke. I lost my wife, my children, my houses, cars, everything, and I become homeless. And that's where he took me, So in a nutshell, I know we'll get into each part of that story, but that's about it, man. Come over here 18 years ago to Texas for 2 weeks only and never went back. So this is my home. San Antonio is where I live now. We have 5 offices around the world. We're very successful at what we do. We have a 97% success rate, unheard of, and a money-back guarantee, unheard of in the industry. But we know our shit, we know our stuff. Every single one of my guys are recovered alcoholics and addicts, and we just love what we do because we do what we love.
All right, so let's hop back in the Wayback Machine, because I am the world's worst guitar player, and I'll freely admit it. But I didn't pick it up until I was 50. So you picked up the guitar at 5. Who were some of your influences, and who did you like to listen to as you were growing up?
Well, it's weird because I don't remember until it was later on, but I remember practicing every during the week, because I went out with my uncle and auntie, and I just in the background playing bass as much as I could. But influences, whatever we had to rehearse for the week before, so they always stuck a couple of songs in, new songs, mainly country songs, the old country style, a little bit of pop. But as I grew up into my teens, there are a few groups that stick out that are very, very good, that people don't think they're very, very good. Like ABBA. The musical arrangements on the music is mind-blowing on ABBA. Yeah. They're very, very good. I grew up with Thin Lizzy, Status Quo. Never got into the rock side of it. I've never really heard Black Sabbath and Deep Purple and all that. I wasn't into that stuff. And then, of course, when I started really playing bass guitarists from Level 42, Bootsy Collins, all them great bass players. And I love any kind of music. If you came into my house tonight, you will hear rap, you will hear a little bit of rock, pop, country. I mean, I don't have a specific genre that I listen to because I'm a musician. I listen to lots and lots of different styles and variations.
And and I'm a big fan of Thin Lizzy. I was a big fan of Phil Lynott. I just thought he was an amazing bass player, but also the guitars were out of this world. They played the most synchronized guitars I've ever heard. So, guys, if you don't know Thin Lizzy, definitely check out some early, especially early Thin Lizzy. Just check him out. You'll definitely be happy. So now, when you were gigging around, obviously you've seen the seedier side of life, especially behind the scenes of musicians. They're known for that, so you must have seen a lot of that.
Yeah, I mean, I always wanted to be a professional musician. So in my teens, typical musician is semi-professional. You'd load $2,000 worth of gear into a van that costs $200 to get paid $20. That's what we were doing. But, one day somebody called me. There was a studio just outside Manchester in Stockport. It was owned by 10cc. And they said, do you want to do some session work? And I'm like, what is session work? They said, well, you go in, you read music, they give it to you. You can't rehearse it. You play, you're out the studio. And I said, yeah, I can do that. So, you got to remember back in the day, probably £5 per gig, maybe. I don't know. It's too long ago. I went in the studio and I did 4 tracks and they gave me £50. And I was like a millionaire. I was like, oh my God, this is what session playing is. So, I eventually started playing through just complete practice and being the best around because I have the addictive personality. I'm either the best or don't do it. Played at Abbey Road. So I sessioned with Elton John, David Bowie, Queen, all them guys in the early hours of the morning, which is brilliant because it put me through college. So yeah, music has always been in my blood because it's in the family. So yeah, I mean, even today I have a music room in my house and I'll pop in there now and again. And, I have like 7 guitars, 3 bass, full set of drums, mics, PAs, violins, everything. I can play any instrument in the world. Obviously, if it's new to me, you've got to give me 10, 15 minutes, to find out where stuff is. But I'm just natural like that. My brother isn't, but he can build a house. I have no idea how to build a house. He can paint walls. I have no idea how to paint walls, as stupid it may seem. And don't even get into car mechanics. I have no idea. But music and getting people well, that's my forte, man.
And, a lot of people don't know that Elton John's been clean a long time now. And he actually helped the artist Eminem, helped him get clean and sober too. So, and I think that's a great testament to Mr. Elton John that he can be. I think he's over 20 years. I think of sobriety now. So and he partied. He was a hardy partier at one point in his life, but he decided to get clean, and he actually tried to help George Michael get sober, and that's when they had the big falling out. Because so I want to give a big shout out to Elton. You're probably not listening to this, but Elton, I respect you with everything you're doing. So,
guys, let me tell you a little story about Elton John. We're in a studio one night, just like 2:00 in the morning. It's raining and pouring and winding and lightning outside and thunder. And every now and again, the electricity would run out because of the strike, but the generator would kick in. Well, it's like a fraction of a second, but it did, interrupt the recording. So after about 6 or 7 times, Elton says, come on, I've had enough of this, cursing and everything. And we went back to his penthouse suite at the Savoy Hotel. So back in the day, the Savoy Hotel, guys, was one of the best, if not the best hotel in the world. It was so prestigious. But we were upstairs in his penthouse, and there's 20 of us there. And I hear Elton screaming from the bedroom. Go Google this, guys. Screaming from the bedroom. And I think, who's he talking to? He's like really cursing. And I went in, and this is how crazy days and crazy he was when he was using and drinking. He was on the phone to the manager of the hotel, telling the manager that if he didn't stop the rain and the wind immediately, he would never book into his hotel ever again. That's were the crazy days. That's when I knew I was in the mix of not going to get out of this alive.
And, that's something that, I quote all the time, the great poet laureate, Jim Morrison says, nobody gets out of here alive. So, we might as well enjoy life while we have it here.
Exactly.
So talk to us, when did it start getting really deep and dark for you in your addiction?
It wasn't till maybe I was drinking heavily, don't get me wrong, and still functioning. But when it really started to turn, I got married and, decided to have the first child. And I thought that would clean and sober me up, but it didn't. Then my second child. So during that time, there was a lot of stuff happened in the house and work that wasn't good. I stabbed my wife 3 times one night, Richard, because she won't let me finish my bottle of vodka. And that's the nice side that happened in that house. That's one thing I can share on air, even though it's shocking. I did much worse than that. So it's around that time. But the craziest thing was I didn't think I had a drink problem. Everybody was telling me, and I'm walking around the backyard at 5:30 in the morning drinking half a bottle of vodka, but didn't think I had a problem. That's how crazy it got. And after I lost everything, I'm on the streets for 14 months. Only then, one morning when I broke down, I realized that I couldn't stop drinking. So, it's a crazy disease. And that's when it got really dark for me. I attempted suicide 7 times, and on 2 occasions it worked. I was dead on the side of a smelly, old, wet Manchester road in deep hours of the morning. And they call the ambulance, and they come around, and they saved my life on 2 occasions. And I've got to tell you, I hated them men for that. I hated them men for because I didn't want to live. I tried jumping off buildings. I tried tying myself to railway tracks. I tried overdose. I tried slitting my wrist. It was just crazy. Somebody always found me, But now I know why. But back in the day, obviously I didn't. So, yeah, it became horrible.
But now there's a difference between being homeless in Los Angeles, California, than to being homeless in the UK, where it rains almost every day.
Yeah.
And it's cold rain. It's not warm rain. So there's a whole different connotation of being homeless when you're wet and cold and you're hungover or you're dope sick.
It is, I remember one guy founding me. It was snowing, and I was against this fence where the construction guys were working. It was opposite St. Mary's Hospital in Manchester, and I'd passed out. I drank myself, passed out. And when he found me, I was close to death. All my face and everything was covered in snow. And it's just because I moved a little bit, he thought it was an animal, and he came over and he found me, and they rushed me to hospital. But yeah, it's cold over there, man. I remember the first night that my dad threw me out. He gave me like £5, just a lot of money, and closed the door on me at midnight because I'd been drinking in the house. And I said the promise was I would never do that. And a friend of his was my sponsor at the time, told him to throw me out because it would save my life. And he did. And it was not till many years later, when I'd got sober and I was back in the house with my mom one day, and we were drinking tea. Dad was out at the bar with his friends, and she said, "Do you remember that time Dad threw you out?" And I said, "You know what, Mom? I hate that man for doing that, and I still hate him today. This is how much freaking damage we do to people, and we don't even know it." And she said, "Can I tell you something, son? In 50 odd years of being married to your father, that's the only and first time I've seen him cry." And it devastated me. How much shit do we do? How much damage do we cause? And we're oblivious to it, And that's one of my big things today is, alcohol has 1% to do with alcoholism, the same with drug addiction. It's not the problem, it's a symptom. The problem, I never had a drinking problem, Richard. I had a thinking problem. I damaged people. People lied for me. I pulled everyone in. I was like a contagious illness. Everybody I came near to, I infected with my disease, the lying, the cheating, it's a horrible disease, and it's not about the alcohol. People think it is. If you can just stop drinking. The only problem is when I stopped drinking, I was still left with my warped mind. There are 3 parts of the brain that differ with alcoholics to any other addict or illness in the world that normal people don't know about. So it's not a choice, but we have to start being responsible once we get sober. So when I stopped drinking for 2, 3, 4 months, I think I had 9 months at one time, There was no alcohol in my body, but the behavior and circuitry of my brain hadn't changed. So sooner or later, I was destined to relapse. And so I did every single time.
And as I'm scribbling shit here because I want to talk about it. I put out a post a couple of weeks ago because I just celebrated 35 years of continuous sobriety and being clean. And I put out a post and I caught a lot of shit for it, but I wrote that relapse does not have to be a part of your recovery. You don't have to relapse. Because I know a lot of people that they were like, you know what? I'm going to go out for one more good time. They don't come back. And now when I go back to that meeting, there's a chair empty because they thought they had one more run in them. Yeah. So talk about, relapse does not have to be a part of your recovery.
Relapse is not part of the solution. Relapse is part of the disease. Step out of the disease and get into the solution. End of story. Yeah, but shut up. End of story. I was sick to death of watching people die inside and outside the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous and CA and NA. Lack of knowledge. If the book said, I love that book. It's the best book in the world pertaining to recovery of an alcoholic. The rooms, no, not anymore. We're down to 3%. But let me get into that. Yeah, relapse. You don't have to relapse. That's why I'm still doing what I did today. People say, when I first started getting sober, oh, you're on a pink cloud. I've been on a pink cloud for 32 years. I ain't coming down for nobody. Life is for living. If you want to go out and try it one more time, God bless you. But listen, let me tell you about the research we've done with people that almost died of alcoholic poisoning, heart attacks, liver failure, and they brought them back. And this is one thing they said to me, Richard, which was all in common, is I didn't drink that much that night. That's the disease. It's not the quantities we take. It's not what times we do it. It's when alcohol or drugs get into my body, I react different to the normal person. You see, I have the obsessive mind. It's called the basal ganglia in the brain. And I will repeat behavior if nothing's changed. And I will repeat behavior. So when we do relapse, because most treatment centers talk about relapse prevention, which is a bunch of shit. The stuff I've heard, and there's some great ones, guys. Thank you for doing a great job. But there are some ones that are just teaching this shit, saying things like, there's 20 of us there. This time next month, 5 of us would have gone or died or relapsed. It's like, shut up. Let's get to the crux of the matter. And it's not about the alcohol or drugs, man. It's about my childhood trauma. It's about the way I think, the progressive illness, about the basal ganglia, the hypothalamus, how it turns around and tells me at one time not to drink water and eat food to survive, but to drink alcohol. That's why we can go days or weeks without food or water. You see, I didn't know that. So I hung around the guys in these 12-step meetings that weren't really alcoholics. And because they could just stop because they wanted to, they expected me to, but I can't do that. Because I'm the real alcoholic, which means that I'm allergic to the ethanol in alcohol and I have an obsessive mind. My mind wants to kill me and make it look like an accident. And let me tell you, the mind is different than the brain. Ever heard, guys, the saying mind over matter? The mind, our energy, power, you can't feel it, touch it, hear it. The mind is matter. The brain is matter. So mind over matter. When you get up every morning, you can train your brain to have an amazing, fantastic day. But if you don't clear the past up, if you don't clear that childhood trauma, and everybody has childhood trauma, you can tell by the way they behave today, you've got to go past and clear that up. And then you step into the solution. There's no relapse. Will I be sober in 100 years' time? Yes, if I continue to do today, my morning work, my afternoon work, my nighttime. I'd be kind to people. I can't prevent 3 people. All the stuff that I do today. But if I stop doing that, and I've proven this in the past, I will relapse. There's no cure for alcoholism, guys. But you know something? There's no cure for the common cold or food poisoning. But there are simple steps and rules you can take to make sure you never get that. As simple as that. So, relapse is not part of the solution. It's part of the disease.
And like once I started playing guitar, I started listening to a lot of different musical influences, and I just wrote, there was Jimmy, there was Janis, John Bonham, lead singer for AC/DC. I'm sure that they had plans for the next day. They thought they were just going to go out one more time, have one more party, and they never came back. So, guys, if you like Dr. Robb says, relapse doesn't have to be a part of your recovery. But now also somebody asked me, because I'm on a lot of podcasts. I think I have 300 lined up this year myself. And a lot of people ask me, well, are you sober or are you dry? And what's the difference? In my opinion, I'm not a doctor. I'm only a ninth grade dropout. But my opinion is being dry means I don't drink, but I'm still an asshole. Sober means I don't drink and I'm trying not to be an asshole. So talk to us about the difference between being dry and being sober, because there's a big difference.
There is, and there's a big difference between people who abuse alcohol, heavy drinkers, and the real alcoholics. So, it's not about the alcohol. That's one thing we have to realize. We have an allergy to it, to the ethanol in there. So if you're dry, I mean, it's crazy. I was dry for, like I said, 9 months at one time. No behavior change. No psychic change, which means a change in neural pathways, which today they call neuroplasticity. There's no change, so therefore I will relapse no matter how hard, if I'm the real deal. Now, there are people that can just stop completely. You're not an alcoholic, guys. I hate to tell you that, because I know you go to all the meetings and it's great. Go, go, go. I love it. Go as many meetings as you can. But if you're not the real alcoholic, shut up when somebody's dying at the back of the room who really needs help. The book says it all, So recovered, the book mentions 17 times. What does recovered mean? Does it mean I'm cured? No. Two entirely different words by dictionary. Let's look at, so that 12-step group started, the Oxford group, that most of the people went to Oxford University like me. So if you look in the Oxford English Dictionary for recovered, it says to gain one's health and state of mind. That's all it says. Well, I'm not sick anymore because I'm not feeding the allergies, so I'm not sick, and I've been restored to sanity. So to gain one's health and state of mind, that's what recovered means. Doesn't mean we're cured, but you can step out of that continual relapse. And the people, you've got to watch who the people I hang around with. You hang around 9 depressed people, you will become the 10th. If you hang around 9 successful people, you will become the 10th. It's the memory part of the brain and behavioral. We're behavioral people. We learn off one another. So monkey see, monkey do kind of thing. If I hang around a friend of mine as a stupid saying, in a couple of weeks, I'll be saying that stupid saying that I hated when she said it. It's just part of it. So you got to be careful who you hang around with. That's for sure. But, there's millions of us out there that's got to a place where they're successful, whatever that looks like for you. I can tell you 4 years ago, my daughter got in touch with me. I flew over there and she handed me my 3-month-old granddaughter. That's called success. Forget the money. I've been rich and I've been poor. Don't get me wrong. I choose rich every time, but it didn't buy me happiness. So what does a successful look like for you? I want to hang around them sober, successful guys that, conversations don't revolve around alcohol every time we meet. What? If people outside the industry, I don't introduce me as an alcoholic. I mean, I just don't drink. Why do people make such a big deal of it? Oh, you don't drink. Why? Can you imagine if it, and that's the only, by the way, it's the only thing that people question is alcohol. You don't go to a barbecue and say, I don't like cheese. And they go, you don't like cheese? Why? We don't do that as a society. So, we've got to get used to that. And we've got to push this message forward that stop thinking, that you're going to relapse. Otherwise, you're going to relapse. Start expanding the mind of what is possible. Use quantum physics, read up on quantum physics and neuroscience, which we specialize in, the neuroscience side, and you'll find out that you really can do anything you put your mind to.
And, but for me, I can actually go look at my refrigerator here, and there's beer, there's wine, because I don't drink it. I identify as a non-drinker. So for me, it's not even, somebody says, I tell everybody I drink, I die. Next, but I also make sure that when I go out to eat with my bride and my family, that even if I order a Diet Coke and it's not in a can, my wife will taste it before I drink it. She won't even cook with to make vanilla cookies with the vanilla extract with the regular vanilla extract. I won't use certain scopes or mouthwash because it has the alcohol with them. I'm just trying to protect myself at every single measure. So talk about that is not putting yourself in a position to fail.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, in the early days, you've got to watch what you do. You've got to watch where you go. I mean, for many years, I would buy orange juice, and in England, they'd serve it in a bottle. I would put my thumb over that bottle for all night until I finished that drink. And again, with the second one, because I was protecting myself. Loads of people, I've had vodka poured in my drinks before, as, Robb's miserable, let's get him in the mood. And, I'm struggling with alcoholism, I'm treated, so I'm going to freaking die if I don't sort it out. They don't know that. But I mean, common sense. If you feel going to an event and you stood with your God, spirit of the universe, or energy, or whatever, Uncle Jimmy, whatever it is, then go. I mean, I have vodka, rum, wine in my house that my sister and brother-in-law drinks every single night. I will pour it for them. When they come home from work, I have everything ready for them. But I know deep inside that if I drink that, all bets are off. I think Robbie Downey Jr. said it best. He said, if you have a drink I can't have a drink on the 6th, 7th, 8th of January because I have plans for Christmas. And that's about right. If I drink now, we don't know where it's going to end. We just don't know because the choice has been taken away from me again. And let me talk about why that choice is the hypothalamus that tells us from birth. It's a survival part of our brain. It tells us we have to drink water and eat food to survive. You'll often see babies put their hand down their mouth or cry because the tummy hurts. It's a natural response from the brain. That's our survival. It's what we need to do. At a certain point of drinking career, which mine was in the 20s, my hypothalamus changes, and this is where we differ from other addictions. And he turns around and tells me to drink alcohol. When your brain tells you to do something, you don't have a choice. You do it. It becomes a working part of the brain, the neural pathways to self-sabotage, because that's the real problem, ingrained from birth. You had childhood trauma to that, abandonment, never been validated or approved from parents or caregivers. I grew up, I was thinking I was less than, I wasn't worthy, the imposter syndrome, all that stuff you grow up with. And people don't believe that, learned behavior and enmeshment from parents can have an effect on a child. But let me tell you this. We've done absolutely everything to trace and track this and research everything we talk about. If a young girl, 9, 10, 11 is in the house and on a regular basis, she sees dad come home, he's drunk and he ends up in a fist fight with mom, she learns a few things really quickly. She learns to listen for the key in the door. If the key goes straight into the lock and opens, it's going to be a great night. If it jingles around trying to get it in, she has to run and hide because it's going to be violence. So what effect does that have when they grow up? Well, that teenager goes into late teenage and goes to college and he meets a guy, but who she'll attract? The same guy that ends up beating her and ends up having an alcohol or drug problem. It's just the way it is with our mind and our energy, who we attract, to the point that if she did meet somebody who really treated her really well, she would self-sabotage that relationship because it doesn't feel natural. So unless you go back and you do your work, you're not going to make it, guys.
Okay, so now, like I said, I'm not any professional whatsoever, but I've been clean a while. You're like my 1200th interview, and I've realized a couple of things that when an adult acts out, it's usually because of trauma from the ages of 3 to 13, and then my military and first responders. Then you add war to the mix. You add drugs to the mix, alcohol to the mix. Not all the time, but most of the time. And then you have the storm. And nobody tells you how to get out of the perfect storm, unless they've been there.
You can add iPhone to that and games to that. You show me a kid that's playing games for 10 hours a day, I'll show you a future addict.
Why? What's the correlation?
The addictive personality, the isolation, they're doing the same thing over and over again for hours and hours and hours and hours. It's the same. Drug addicts are not born. They have the addictive personality. Most drug addicts that we see, 95%, especially women, who have a serious heroin problem started in the doctor's office. So it's that repetitive things of concentrating on lack of communication, no validation, all that stuff that enhanced, and both show up the same, alcoholism and drug addiction, like I say, but in the brain, they're different. But yeah, you get into that self-sabotaging pattern of doing something that's not good for you. You're never going outside. You're never getting the pure oxygen that you need. The dopamine, oxytocin, the serotonin, all that stuff is not being produced in the brain. And if it's not produced in the brain, then we take the nearest thing that makes us feel good. So all that kid needs to do in school or college somewhere is taste a drug and they're off to the races, because everything is focused on gaming when they grow up. So it's one that makes them feel good. They get addicted to games. If you take the computer off, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old kid, he'll have nothing. He won't be able to function, and that's how bad it is. iPhones are the same. You see people all the time. How many friends you got? I got 5,000 friends on Facebook. Buddy, you just plugged into the wall. You don't have any. And we see that today with children that are coming up. We have no communication skills. When they put out into the real world, something really bad happens where they feel as if they've been left behind, they feel abandoned, and then they isolate. I hate to say it, but most people that end up in school, shooting the school up, is the guy at the back of the class that nobody speaks to, and he gets deeper and deeper into his depression. And then the gaming comes up, and he's more likely to do that. I'm not saying everybody, but if we just open communications, if we just limited gaming or iPhones or iPads or whatever to several hours a day, then we see a different child. We see a different teenager growing up where he's actually conversing in a world around him and different feelings, and get outside and all the stuff that we need. We're not meant to be inside. Human beings are not meant to be inside. And as Gary Brecker says, so many people have sat down for way too long. We're not meant to sit down either. We're meant to stop telling granny to don't go outside, it's too cold. What? We've got a different angle. It's the same with addiction. As people think, because they've been brought up that way, to say this is what it is, the drugs, it's not. Everything you know about addiction and alcoholism, I had to question. I had to question a lot, and what I found out was mind-blowing. It really was. So yeah, we see the generation coming up now. Don't limit to one thing that eliminates everything else apart from the excitement in the brain, the dopamine and everything, when you're playing games, because you'd be looking for that dopamine outside, and dopamine is not in other human beings. It's things that make you feel better about yourself and change the way you feel, and that's where we're going, unfortunately.
And I'm interviewing the drummer for Def Leppard, Rick Allen, in a little while, and I'm going to talk to him about what you're talking about, because Steve Clark, the guitarist that died at a young age, all he would do was sit and play guitar, and then eventually, when he got on stage, he had to drink in order just to play in front of people. Yeah. So I think it can go back to being, even with music, if you just sit in your room and grow up, all you're doing is playing guitar, you really don't know how to talk to other people. You don't know how to converse or have a conversation, correct? Is it? So it's pretty much along the same lines, right?
Yeah. Anything that we absolutely get addicted to, and that can be cake, porn, food, guitar, iPads. The only different with the iPads and the iPhones is the stimulation for the mind. That's the only thing that's different. But yeah, you isolate and do one thing. Then when you come out into the world, you can only do that thing. I've worked with the biggest movie stars, rock stars, TV people. I'm working with 3 massive guys right now in the industry, in the music industry, and they all tell me the same. That unless I have a guitar around my neck, I can't function. Yeah,
I mean, even with Nikki Sixx, Nikki was struggling with heroin, and and a lot of those guys struggle with it. But we just lost. I wish I could remember the kid's name. He's not a kid to me; he's a kid. But the guy from Friends, who knew that he was struggling? Everybody thought he was clean, off of everything, and then the autopsy report comes out. So even if we think somebody's clean, some of the times they're not clean anymore. They're just hiding it really well.
Yeah, I mean, God bless Matthew Perry, and I actually met him in Dallas many years ago. But I'm not going to get into and diss his name or anything like that. But he was struggling till the day he died. A few of us knew about that. Like everyone else, when somebody goes on TV saying I'm clean and sober, people believe them, and rightly so, you know. But when you're in the industry as long as I am, you see things different. And, you know, there's a million, you know, Matthew Perry's every month, every 6 months, every whatever it is, that do exactly the same thing. It's just obviously he was highlighted because he was famous. But yeah, I mean, it's an isolation disease, and it's the only disease.
But you know, because I'm thinking of people that I admire, like Chester Bennington, you know, Robin Williams. Some of these, they're so happy. They look like they're happy on the outside, but they're really struggling on the inside. And then when Robin Williams, they find him hanging in his closet, people were like, "Oh, I never even saw it." Well, you weren't really paying attention, because a lot of times the people that are struggling, they're going to tell you what they're struggling, but you're not really listening.
There's always signs, Richard. There's always signs, you know. And the reason why we studied suicide is my wife now had a brother, and they were all at, you know, a party barbecue at Dad's house, and he had children and wife and everything. And he said to my wife Janet, said, "I'm just going to nip home for 20 minutes." He was struggling with alcoholism and addiction, but he was clean and sober at the time. He went back home, opened the garage, walked in, took a gun and blew his head off. And there was didn't seem any reason. But if you'd have put me in that situation around him, I could have told you that something bad was going to happen. But we don't see it. I mean, mostly because we don't want to see it. But family and friends, you know, there are signs we can look out for. They're very, very small. But unfortunately, entertainers, most comedians come off and go home to isolation or crying or, you know, drugs or alcohol, because you're on every time. I remember working with this guy in the UK. He was a huge comedian. And, you know, he said, the only problem with my job is everybody expects you to tell a joke when you meet them. And that's not normal life, you know. So we put on, a lot of people do that. They put on a new mask when they walk out the door every morning, you know, hiding behind that mask. And 96% of people do that. And it's just, you don't really know the person until you really know the person.
And, you know, because I'm a big comedy guy. I love comedians, but a lot of them struggle with addiction and depression and anxiety. So for 20 minutes, if they're on stage, they're okay.
Yeah.
It's the other 1,420 minutes that's the problem, right?
The interesting part as well is if you go back in their childhood, usually they're bullied. And the way to get out of being bullied is to be funny and tell jokes. So it all starts from there. So the childhood trauma is rife by the time they grow into an adult. And then they can be quite famous. They can be very famous, but it's always still there waiting, you know, and that's what happens. It gets overwhelming. Nobody in their right mind would kill children, would massacre a school, would commit suicide. Nobody in their right mind. There's something gone wrong somewhere. Babies are not born to kill other people. They're really not. So you've got to look at the parenting, very loosely parenting, caregivers is better. Sorry, guys, caregivers, people around them and stuff like that. But there's always signs, you know, there really is.
Yeah, I mean, because if you look at like some of my favorite comedians, Chris Farley, Richard Pryor, John Belushi, you know, they were these talented people while they're on stage but they're tormented when they're not in front of a crowd. When they're by themselves, they're tormented
all the time. Richard Farley, famous word. He said to his friend, I can't remember what it is. He said, "I'm sick of being the funny fat guy," you know. And he was sick to death of that. But obviously, he was very famous, but just couldn't. You know, something in his brain said, "That's it. I'm done. I'm out." And plus, you see these guys going downhill really heavily, drinking and using, and the body can't stand that. It's like when people go, the Rolling Stones are still, oh my God, they take all them drugs and they still perform. You cannot take drugs and drink alcohol in excess if you're running around the stage in your 70s. You have to be of peak performance. And I can tell you that they are. So don't get fooled by drugs and alcohol. No, it used to be like that with many people. Not now. If you see guys now who are very successful and been around since the freaking 70s, 80s or whatever, they're in their peak fitness. They just keep that myth, rock and roll, drink and drugs, but they ain't doing it anymore. A lot of people, the new drunk is the new sober today.
Yeah, and if you look at Mick Jagger, I mean, he's got an 8-pack and he's running around. He's having kids at 80. So yeah, he's doing something right.
You think he's doing that with alcohol and drugs? Rife in his, nah, you can't do it. It's a myth. It's a myth. And most people, especially people coming up now, they're going no to alcohol. and choosing a better way of life. And that's what it's about. What quality of life? Because it's been proven over and over again that the mind can do anything that you want it to. And people used to say to me all the time, they go, well, I can't be president of the United States. Forget your political views for a second. We had a businessman with no political training or education running the country for a few years. So don't tell me that you can't do anything that you put your mind to, because it's just not true.
So if somebody's coming to you or if I came to you and I said, Doc, I'm sick and tired of sick and tired. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, which I was in January 1st, 1989. So what are the first steps you have those people do when they come to you and say, I really need help and I'm willing to change?
Well, first of all, you got to make sure they're right. Okay. So before you can get in front of me, you have an assessment. Now, I was the guy in Dallas, Texas, that turned down Britney Spears in Campese's restaurant because she wasn't ready. And a dad, Jamie, offered me $1 million. And I said no, because if I do it for money, then I might as well go drink myself and die. So I wouldn't do it. So we have to make sure they're right. And some of the antics that we'll pull, especially in an office environment, is I will sit in front of the potential patient and I would say, I know you used to take, Adderall or X or whatever it is. And I'd say to him, like, I've got some Xanax in my drawer that I took off a patient. Here you go. Just have one more night and we start tomorrow. And if he takes that drug, all bets are off. We're not working with him. And we stop him down in it, obviously, because that would be illegal. But we go out to the waiting room and we tell his parents he's not ready. You have to be fully committed to change the way you think, the way you walk, the way you act, the way you behave. You've got to be willing to change everything about you and have fun as well. Because if you're not having fun, go drink. If you're struggling every single, my sponsees, when I used to be in AA, used to call me, oh, Rob, I feel like drinking. Go drink. I'm not this powerful. I wish I was. God bless you. But there's something you missed out. You have something missed out and you go drink. Don't call me and tell me, go drink. There's nothing I can do. No human power can relieve my alcoholism, but God could and would if he was sought, the book says. And I love that. When you connect with a higher power and you have the neural pathway change, which is psychic of the mind, psychology, when you have a psychic change and a spiritual awakening, your DNA changes. You cannot be the same person as you was before. Otherwise, you'll relapse.
And, like when I first got sober, my first 90 days, the thing that really got me through that first period was I read the promises like 5 or 6 times a day, because I believe that, hey, if I just don't drink today, the promises are going to come true. So I just got to make sure I can drink any day except today. And if I don't drink today, then the promises will come true. And that's what kept me on the straight and narrow for the first couple months. But also, when I'm an old, me and you, we're old school, where I would go, the first meeting I went to was January 2nd, 1989. And I sat down with a bunch of old guys and they're drinking nasty coffee, eating stale cookies. And they just said, sit down, shut up, open your ears. You don't know nothing. So just learn.
Yeah. And
I think that was some of the greatest things I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Was just sit down and shut up.
Yeah. They're the old timers, the good old timers, not the ones that have been sober for 20 years and still miserable. They're the guys. Same here, Richard. My guys were, my sponsor was a son of a mob in a very famous gangster in London. And he would say the same, shut up, sit down. You don't know shit. Don't say anything. You don't deserve to say anything. That's if you want to recover, listen. And that's what I did, amongst a few other things. But yeah, you can't see, people want to sugarcoat this stuff, Meetings are never going to keep you sober, guys. You go to 100 meetings a day, it's never going to keep you sober. It's that constant contact with God. Read the book, change the way you think, get all your work done. We're the fellowship of the book. Alcoholics Anonymous is the book. We're the fellowship of. But you don't see that today. You see all little cliques in meetings, but going back 20, 30 years is the guys when the success rate was huge. They were serious. You see, things are not going to be okay if you keep drinking and use it. They're really not. And I tell parents this all the time. is you're going, well, my son's upstairs and I don't want to annoy him. You're going to find him dead in his room. Who do we blame for that? Well, we blame you, parents, first of all, and we blame, obviously, the son for not getting help. But you cannot sit back and say everything will be okay, because it won't. This will kill you. If there was an exception to the rule, believe me, as a fighting man and a bodybuilder when he was younger, I could fight everybody, and I was a nasty piece of work, but I couldn't fight this disease. It put me on my ass every single time. So, it's okay. You relapse there, Johnny. Hey, Rob, can you get him a cup of tea? He relapsed. No, I can't get him a cup of tea. Johnny, why the fuck are you not on the same program that got me to a different place? Why do you keep coming in, getting the same chip every single time? You don't have to do that. You really don't. So then we've got to look at who's he talking to. And you go to his sponsor, and the sponsor, oh, well, he wasn't ready. No. When you're taking people under your care, you need to come straight from that book, and you need to come straight from reality. Is don't mess around. Most of my guys today will go, hey, you think I'm a biscuit factory? You think I sugarcoat everything? You're wrong. You're really wrong. Now, for heavy drinkers and, abuse drinkers and people that just want to stop drinking, that's great. Go and find them guys. But for the real alcoholic, you can't mess around with these, whimsy-bimsy sponsors that because he stays sober for 2 years, thinks you can as well. It's not going to work.
Yep. And by the way, one of my greatest friends, and he's an English bloke, former Mr. Olympia, Mr. Dorian Yates.
Oh, I know him well.
I love Dorian. Another dude, another amazing dude that he tells you the way it is, whether you like it or not. It is what it is. So talk to us for the last couple of minutes. Like I used to get when I would go to meetings, and I would say, because now I had 20, 25 years, and I would ask whenever I go speak, how many of you have actually done the 4th and the 6th step? No hands go up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but that's where the rubber meets the road, when you can tell somebody else, a stranger, all the shit you've done, and that's when you can start making amends and start, and I tell everybody, not taking the steps got me thrown out of my house, but taking the steps got me into my brand new house. So talk about, actually doing the steps of the 12-step program.
It's 12-step program is brilliant. There's no doubt about that. Do the work, go through them. Most times, if you're that guy, you'll recover. But you have to look at what the steps are, because a lot of people, unfortunately, through the last 20, 30 years, they misquote book. They misquote book with the steps all the time. I mean, step 1, we're all powerless over alcohol. It doesn't say that. We admitted we were. It's a past tense word. We were. I'm not powerless over alcohol. I passed 5 liquor stores on the way to my office today. How can I be powerless? So when you start the steps and you've got a full knowledge of your condition, which is reading the book, then we were powerless. Well, I'm not powerless. Neither can you be if you're taking the steps. So it's really important we see stuff like that. One of the biggest misquotes in 12-step rooms is, I can choose a God of my own understanding. It never says that in the book. Never. It says you can choose a God as you understand him, with a capital H. It has to be something. It's a God. There's, 3,000 gods in the universe. Just pick one. It's kind of that. But people like, oh yeah, your sponsor can be the group. No, you can't. The book says that no human being, you can't help me, guys. Now, a good sponsor can guide me, and the meetings are amazing, and you can get coffee and shoot the crap with people. It's amazing, but you're going to relapse if you don't do the work. You can't just hang around people that's sober, thinking that they're the real deal, because you'll know if they are. They'll get you straight in the book and straight into, 100 meetings a week will not keep you sober, guys. It really won't. And again, I owe my life to Alcoholics Anonymous. That's where I got sober. That's what I still do today. I don't go to the meetings, but the book I teach, because it's amazing. But yeah, guys, I always say to people, it's about time you got real about this shit. Stop following the herd into relapse. Just stop doing it. If you've had enough, you've had enough. It hasn't been working for the past. It's like when people take, and then again, depressive pills, stuff like that. And I always ask them, how long have you been taking the depression meds? You go, for 10 years. And my answer is, when did you think it was going to kick in? Because it hasn't yet, but we do that as a society. In today's world, everything is instant gratification. It's like, slow down, do the freaking work, and your life will become amazing. And I'm going to give you 3 things, guys, at home right now. We want to change neural pathways, okay? We want to change behavior, and we want to get as much oxygen as we can. Do these 3 things, guys, your life will change for tomorrow. Believe me, if you do them right. So one of the reasons why nobody ever has woke up laughing is because of lack of oxygen. So on a normal circadian rhythm sleep pattern, between 2 and 5 o'clock in the morning is when the body is at its lowest repair, on a normal circadian rhythm, okay? So it's also when most people die of natural causes. So human beings only breathe 25 to 30% of their capability and capacity. We don't get enough oxygen in. So when you go to the gym and you're all, it's not the exercise that's making you feel good. It's this in between. We get oxygen in. So if we're only feeding our body with 25, 30% oxygen, there's a lot there that's going unfed. There's a lot of blood cells to the brain and other parts of the body, central nervous system, not being fed. So I want you to do 20 exaggerated breaths in. When you get up, hold onto the bedstand, you will feel dizzy. Do 20 of those, exaggerated. When you've done that, you'll feel dizzy, but now all your body's awake. Oxygen's got around to every single part of your body. Go into the bathroom. Stand 6 feet away from the mirror, because if you get close up, you see all your blemishes. That's how you go out to see the world, knowing stand 6 foot away, you'll not see any blemishes. You'll see what other people see and say, I love you 10 times. I love you. I love you. Nothing else. No other affirmations. And when you've done that, finish off. If you're a right-handed person, brush your teeth with your right for 1 week, left for 1 week, right for 1 week, left for 1 week. Your life will change.
Okay, I've heard the first 2 before, but never the last one. Please explain the left and the right.
Anything we can do that changes the norm. If you put your pants on with the right foot, do it with your left. Anything, if you're in a pattern of self-sabotage, we want to start changing that and interrupting that circuitry around the brain that always ends up in a bad day or you relapse in. So a quick one is you have to, not concentrate when you do with this. You have to, so new neural pathways are being built for this hand. So you go back to that a week, it's easy. Then you go, it's really, and it just changes the circuitry. It's like if you want to write down some stuff about yourself while you're doing your trauma work, and let's say, for instance, you're right-handed, write it with the left hand. So while the brain and the mind is concentrating on trying to write it properly with the left hand, the brain opens up the subconscious mind that comes out with stuff you've never even thought about in your life that's happened to you. So all these keys about just interrupting thought patterns, interrupting the circuitry. The basal ganglia with alcoholics is broke. If you imagine a clock phase, 10 after, you stop drinking, you get the wife back, get the kids back. Half past the hour, you get your job back, you get the car back, and then 10 to the hour, you self-sabotage. You cannot give me one reason why you self-sabotage, by the way. You give me 1,000 excuses, but not one reason. That's because you need to do your work. So anything that interrupts, go to work a different way. If you have tuna sandwich every single day, have a cheese sandwich. Anything that interrupts where the brain goes, otherwise you're setting that pattern of self-destruct. You have to step away from that, guys. No champions were born in the comfort zone.
I love it. All right, so last question is, Doc, how do we find you? I mean, I know me and you, we've been friends on Facebook for 5 or 6 years now, but what are some of the ways we can find you and support your mission?
Well, patient-wise, we're booked up, guys. I don't think we can, we're not into taking patients, but you can call us 24 hours a day. My staff will talk to you, especially mums and dads. So I spell my name. If you're just listening with 2 B's, ROBBKELLY.com is the website. Or just stick Dr. Robb Kelly in any search engine. You'll find us on all the platforms, guys. Come and say hi. And then obviously we'll get to know you, be friends, all that great stuff. We love everybody. And if you go onto my Facebook and everything, every month or so, we'll post, we're always giving back. Me and my wife give 150,000 back every year back into the community. Usually people addiction or some kind of addiction who are struggling, especially one-parent families where dad's trying to see his children at weekend. Well, We'll pay for his apartment for 12 months. We'll buy him a suit for court. We'll pay for his legal fees. So the RobbKellyFoundation.org, jump on there. And just come on and have fun, guys. You know, if I've said something that offends you today, it's just not lack of knowledge. Right on your 4th step or your 10th step, whatever, put it to your sponsor. It'll be okay. If you're offended, you know, I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to save lives. I don't care what you say or what you believe. God bless you. But I don't care. You know, I've studied this for 30-something years and all fact-checked, all trialed, all tested, all researched over and over again. 2 things I want to finish with, guys, if I may, is if you're sat at home, guys, and you were in that place that I was, where I'm sat there with 2 gaping holes in my wrist thinking I'm never good enough, I don't fit in, I'll never amount to anything. First of all, I want to apologize to you because somebody's put that thought pattern there from trauma. And secondly, 214-600-0210 is my personal cell phone number. Text me. I'll give you a 15-minute pep talk that will change your life. And you know, if I don't, I'm going to send you $100 for your time. Yeah, this is not about the money for me. This is about, if I would rather spend 20 minutes on a call with you, building you up, giving you education, talking to you, and always being a friend from then on, than hear of your funeral next week. Because I know something. Now, I'm wealthy. I've worked a long time. You know, I give a lot away. But when I get to heaven, you know what God's not going to ask me? Hey, Rob, how big was your car? Hey, Rob, how big was the house you slept in? What was it worth? Was it $1 million house, Rob? He's not going to ask me that. He's going to ask me one question, guys. How many fucking people did you help? That's what he's going to say. You know? And I want to be in that position where I help people because somebody helped me. Finally helped me and saved my life. And the other thing I want to say is, Richard, you and Michelle, man, you do something amazing in this world. You know, I've followed you for so long. I look up to you. You know, your podcasts are amazing. The way you carry yourself is amazing. You know, we don't say thank you and compliment enough in this world. We just don't do it. So from me and Janet, who's my wife, to you and Michelle, we want to say thank you for everything you do, man, because with the knock-on effect, man, you're saving millions of lives, you know, and this road can be lonely. I remember back in Dallas, you know, a guy walked in, he was going to commit suicide. He was devastated. You know, he walked in the office, he spent an hour with me, he'd come out, he was whistling, he was laughing with the staff, and 2 nurses in the kitchen, one said to the other, "Oh my God, did you see what Dr. Kelly just did? Just mind-blowing." And the other nurse with a bit of experience says, "I know, right? Have you told him?" "Oh, no, I would never." I mean, he knows. Nobody knows, guys. Nobody knows. Start telling people what they're worth. Start complimenting people, thanking them for the work they do, like Richard and Michelle. So thank you so much, Richard. This has been, I was excited about this 3 days ago. And I've been on like you on 20 podcasts. I'm on Rogan or something in about, I don't know when it is, December. No, it's not December, February sometime. But this was my one, man, because I followed your journey. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you and Janet. I know you got a lot to do today, so when you see her, give her a big hug for me and Michelle. I love you, Doc, and I'm so grateful for you being in my life all these years. So, guys, make sure you reach out to him on all social media platforms. Your life will be better if he's in it.
Oh, thank you, man.
All right, Doc, I love you. Have an amazing week.
Love you too, man. Thank you.
And, guys, remember, vertical momentum, the only way to go is up. I love you guys. Have a great week.